you can share the topic today, the material of this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
那边门可以关起来吗？Okay, I'm going to give 10 minutes review on the content of last week. Do you remember the content of last week? Okay, last week we have described that the cell can be classified as two types. One is mature cell and another one is stem cell, or we can call replicable cell, the cell that can be divided. Okay, so two types. So what is the difference in size? Mature cell is much bigger than the stem cell, right? Okay, so what are the difference in metabolic property? You want to remember that stem cells are more rely on an aerobic metabolism. And the main reason is because the mitochondrial number are much smaller compared to the mature cell. Okay, and the difference can be very big, can be more than 50 times in size. Okay, and you also understand that normally we consider the cell as alive, right? And when you define life, the life has two properties. The first property is anything that can grow, okay, in size. Another one is cell division. Okay, you can produce the descendant. Okay, if you have this kind of property, then you fit the minima criteria of life, right? And that physically you need to have a DNA, right? So anything that you have the DNA, you are able to grow and reproduce, right? Okay, then let's come back to a concept. Okay, let's look at here. You have a cell right here, and you have a nucleus right here, nucleus. And the location of the DNA is inside the nucleus, right? So you can call this cell as alive, right? Okay, but the problem comes in. When the cells are very small, you start to have small things like mitochondria, right? You have mitochondria, which is very small and is inside the cell. Okay, let me ask you the question. Does the mitochondria has its own DNA? Yeah, the answer is yes, right? And you can also see that as the cells start to get mature, the number of the mitochondria increases, right? And that allows the cell becoming more energy efficient, right? And can you say this is alive or lives? Okay, this is what we call eukaryotic cell. Okay, so you alive or lives. Which one is more correct? This is eukaryotic cell, right? You should consider the eukaryotic cell alive or lives. Yes, lives, right? Because you have not only the cell can have a cell division, but also the mitochondria can also have the cell division, right? So it's a family, right? Can you consider this as a life? It's a family, right? So you have so many life inside a eukaryotic cell. So this allows you to redefine your thinking. Okay, you should think the eukaryotic cell is not a life, it's a family, right? Okay, let me just give you another important things that you might understand better. The mitochondria express 3,000, a little bit more than 3,000 genes to sustain its own metabolism. Okay, how about bacteria? The E. coli, for example, it's also very similar. It expresses approximately 3,000 genes. So that means the mitochondria, the difference between mitochondria and bacteria are actually what? The mitochondria is actually an organism which live in a higher organism, right? But the bacteria cannot, right? Bacteria cannot collaborate among other bacteria, right? But mitochondria is actually a similar organism, but cooperative to the higher structure, right? Join the family, right? So this is very important because the mitochondria allows the bigger cell can survive without mitochondria because the bigger cell can produce ATP without oxygen, right? But when the bigger cell owns mitochondria and the mitochondria help the cell to have greater efficiency to produce ATP, right? So this is another example that you can see that you should regard the metabolic advantage can be gained by cooperation, right? So this again gives you the higher level of cooperativity. You already learned hemoglobin, right? You can see the hemoglobin has 4 peptide, 4 subunit. And the 4 subunit allow you to bind oxygen and release oxygen at faster pace by what we call cooperative binding, right? So that's important feature to show you that cooperation at molecular level, right? And now you see another things that a cell can also gain other smaller organisms and they are cooperative and which allows the entire cooperative group gaining ATP more efficiently, right? Okay, so what is the advantage to be small? Do you know? Just give you one example. You see the mitochondria inside an eukaryotic cell. Do you know the half-life of a mitochondria? What is the half-life of a mitochondria? You can just Google and you can check. You just Google mitochondria and half-life. Okay, try. 14 days? Well, that's very long. Is that in cardiac muscle? Yes, in cardiac muscle, the half-life is very long, it's 2 weeks. But in skeletal muscle, it's quite short. Okay, so what is the half-life? 2 to 4 days. Yeah, sometimes it's just 1 day, depending on where the location, depending on who are the hosting family. Okay, so if you are the mitochondria, you jump into the life of skeletal muscle, then the longevity is 2 to 4 days, right? But if you jump into a family of cardiac muscle, which is different family, then the longevity increases into 2 weeks. Okay, so mitochondria is the mitochondria, but who decide the longevity of the mitochondria? The environment, right? Okay. The host family. Okay, so that what do you learn? What do you learn from here? Choosing an environment is extremely important for your longevity and probably the quality of your life, right? Okay, so this is one thing. Another thing is, what if you exercise? Is that influence the mitochondrial longevity?
Yes.
Definitely. Okay, so if you have a muscle, you have a lot of mitochondria right here, right? A lot of mitochondria. And you have the mitochondria which is big, and which sometimes you have mitochondria which is small baby, okay? Then if you exercise, what happens in mitochondria? Increase or decrease?
Then depends on the metabolism process that exercise needs. So I think basically speaking, because exercise is challenge, then it should be increased in order to produce more ATP probably.
Okay, let me just give you one example. Then you might, this is very close, okay? But let me just give you another example just for you to better understand the fact of lives, okay? You remember the Vietnam War, right? Vietnam War, do you remember? What happened in population of Vietnam during the war? Increase or decrease?
Decrease,
right? But what happened in the population after the war?
Increase.
You know what happened? Increase, right? Okay, so people die during the war, right? And then people start to thinking about we should have more baby to sustain the society, right? And it end up the average age of the population change. So what is the change? What is the population of Vietnam right now? Do you know? What is the average age of Vietnam? Just Google and you'll find out. Just Google the average age of Vietnamese. $30, right? Is that young or old? Young. Compared to, how about Taiwan? What is the average age in Taiwan?
39.
39. So it's 9 years older than Vietnam, right? But because we are small. How about Italy or Japan?
48.
48 in Italy or in Japan? 49. So that means the Japanese population are older than Vietnamese, right? Okay. So you understand the fact that the challenge is too bad. We don't want to have a challenge. But what happened after challenge is the age population die earlier.
Also, don't you want to ask how average Indonesian are?
Okay, what is the age?
29.5. It's a half years younger than Vietnamese.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
Okay, that's very good shape. Okay, that's good. Okay, so let me just go back to the scenario. What happened after exercise? Okay, if you measure the mitochondrial number by measuring the oxidative enzyme, the enzyme in TCA cycle, okay? For example, citrate synthase. Citrate synthase, you will learn this later. Citrate synthase is an enzyme in mitochondria, okay? So we can use this as a mitochondrial marker. Okay, you know what happened after exercise? In skeletal muscle, it's like this, drops, and then this is the baseline, okay? This is the baseline. It dropped immediately after exercise. And then it come back in 3 hours. This is 24 hours. And this is 48 hours. Okay, so you know what happened? It drops and then regain like this. Yeah, this is the marker for mitochondria. It's the enzyme, right? The enzyme in TCA cycle, which is the marker of the mitochondria. So when you have exercise challenge, the citrate synthase activity drop immediately and then come back and then almost doubled. And also the mitochondria get younger. Okay? So that means the mitochondrial number is almost doubled. Sometimes you see more, okay, depending on, I'm talking about aerobic exercise. Okay, so if I ask the question, what is the mitochondrial numbers after exercise challenge? How do you answer the question? How do you answer the question? It depends on time of your experiment, right? If you measure the mitochondrial marker immediately after exercise, you see a drop in mitochondrial number because it has been destroyed, especially for the aged mitochondria, has been destroyed, right? And then you have mitochondrial biosynthesis going on for a long period, 48 hours. It's coming back and doubled, right? So this is what happened in skeletal muscle. Yes, and then this is the the explanation to explain why you train your muscle, then your muscle has more oxidative capacity. So this is what we call adaptation against aerobic exercise. Okay, so I'm talking about aerobic exercise, okay, not weight training. Okay, weight training is different. Okay, so you have learned that if you want to measure the mitochondria, you can learn how to measure citrate synthase activity, and we have the protocol if you want to do the measurement, which is quite easy for us. Adi, you have done this, right? Have you done this? Have you measured citrate synthase before?
It's not me, Lao Sir. Lai Su Cha.
Okay, another student.
Another
Okay,
student.
I see.
But Lao Sir, may I have question? So regarding about your explanation in the mitochondria, if we do not perform any physical exercise, does our body, especially mitochondria, will die by itself and adjust to the like specific amount that our cell needs, or what happened?
Can you say again? I don't quite understand.
Based on your explanation, this is talking about the effect of aerobic training, right? But what about if we do not perform any physical activity? Does our body will like eliminate, like the mitochondria will die by itself and into the same like into the specific amount that the cell needs, or what will happen if we do not do physical exercise?
Okay, that's a very good question. If you are sedentary, you don't train yourself, what happened to the mitochondrial turnover? Mitochondria still die when it get big. Okay, big, increase in size is aging, right? So you have the aging mitochondria inside the cell. Okay, and when the mitochondria becoming unhealthy, then it can be recognized. It can be recognized by two levels. The first level is the inside cell has the mechanism called autophagy. Have you learned this term before? Autophagy?
That is my master thesis, Lawson.
Yeah, autophagy. Okay, autophagy is the mechanism, intracellular mechanism to recognize anything that looks abnormal in structure, and then it would triggers this mechanism to replace the mitochondria. Okay, this is the intracellular mechanism, and the higher level is called inflammation. Okay, and how the information can go. If you have, you understand that mitochondria has the DNA which is very similar to bacteria, right? But it will not get attacked by immune system as long as these DNA are inside the cell, right? But if you have the challenge and you have the muscle fiber rupture, okay, the muscle fiber has been broken, and you have the mitochondria that is leaking out into the circulation, then it would trigger inflammation. Okay, and you understand the inflammation is a whole bunch of immune cells will get in and just kill everybody, regardless you are. Anything unhealthy will be killed by the inflammation, by the immune cells. So that is the second level of the mechanism that would deal with the aging mitochondria, especially under if you are sedentary for a long time and then you start to walk and challenge, then that things can happen. Okay. So the turnover of the mitochondria is slower compared to someone who are exercised. So if you are sedentary, then your mitochondria still turn over, but you will live and then until it's very old, then get killed and then regenerate anew. Okay, but if you have exercise, then the unfit mitochondria get killed more, and then you trigger a signal, the signal of autophagy, it will trigger, and then you start to regenerate. The autophagy would also trigger mitochondrial biogenesis. Okay, so there are many people who study the adaptation against aerobic exercise. This is very important area, how autophagy triggers mitochondrial biogenesis. So you start to have the drop and then regenerate. Okay, so if you have the healthy and higher number of the mitochondria, you can have a better oxidative capacity in your skeletal muscle to produce ATP for oxidative metabolism. Okay, so how about weight training? Okay, can weight training increase the mitochondria?
Well, I think it depends on what type of weight training. If the weight training mainly for muscle endurance, I think it can. Although the increase it's not comparable to the aerobic training also. But if the like explosive exercise or strength muscles training, it won't.
Right, that's a very good answer. If you have the exercise training and you challenge and which cause a lot of muscle damage, then you have inflammation going on, and the inflammation would kill all unhealthy cells, and you have muscle regeneration. You have a lot of regeneration inside the skeletal muscle. And remember that when you have the new cell generated, the mitochondrial number is going to be low, right? Because small new cell has low mitochondrial number compared to the mature muscle. So you are going to see different adaptation comparing aerobic exercise and high intensity resistance exercise. Okay. Okay, so that is the background that I would like everybody to know. Okay, then let's come back to the metabolism. So you have a cell right here, and you have mitochondria right here. This is mitochondria. Okay, and you understand that mitochondria is going to require oxygen. Right? And inside the cell, who carry oxygen? Remember?
Myoglobin? No.
inside the cell.
Is it
Myoglobin.
Yeah.
Myoglobin.
Okay.
Outside the cell,
Heme.
hemoglobin. Inside the cell,
Myoglobin.
myoglobin. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you understand that. Okay. So we have two metabolism. We have glycolysis right here, and we have oxidative metabolism inside the mitochondria. And the ratio of the energy contribution from this or from here is depending on the mitochondrial number. Okay, so when the cell are primitive, okay, when the cell are young, it's more rely on glycolysis. So if you are stem cell, you are more rely on glycolysis. And if you are mature, becoming the mature muscle fiber, you are more rely on mitochondria. Okay, I would like to emphasize, if you look at the muscle fiber, okay, if you look at muscle fiber and you just do cross section, you will find that not all muscle fiber has many mitochondria. Okay, just give you one example. You have a muscle cross section right here. This is your leg, okay? And you have a bone right here. This is your bone right here, okay? And you can see the myofiber. Around the bone, the myofiber are very small. Okay, they are very small. And then you start to have a bigger muscle fiber surrounding, bigger muscle fiber, okay? When you do the cross section, you will find that not all myofiber has the mitochondria. And in muscle fiber, if you look at the muscle fiber from here, the big one surrounding far away from the bone, they are very big, right? Big muscle fiber that has very small amount of mitochondria. Okay, and the color of the myofiber are white. Okay, so these myofiber are white. And the myofiber surrounding the bone are red. Right? So you have already done the surgery before, right? You've done the surgery, so you understand that if you want to take the muscle fiber, you want to take the red muscle and white muscle, depending on the location.
Yep.
Yeah. The muscle close to the bone tend to be red. And the muscle far away from the bone tend to be white. And they have different metabolic property. Okay. So for the white muscle, what is the mitochondrial number? Is it higher or lower?
Lower.
That's correct. It's low. Okay. It has low mitochondria. So you understand the white muscle are normally big. Okay, the size are big, but low mitochondria. But in the red muscle are different. In the red muscle has a lot of mitochondria, and the color are red. Okay. How about the energy demand from carbohydrate and fat? What is the energy demand for the white muscle? Okay, let me tell you, if you just do jogging, okay, you go out and jog for 20 minutes, you are not going to recruit the muscle around at this age, okay? You only recruit the muscle surrounding the bone. Okay, so you don't want to misunderstand this, okay? So I said, I want to challenge my muscle, okay? And people say, this is easy. I just go for a jog, right? And that is not 100% correct, because if you just go for a jog for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, you are not going to recruit more than 50% of your muscle fiber, especially the surrounding fast twitch is not going to be challenged. Okay, so you know, right? Okay, and the reason is because the recruitment of all these myofiber is depending on the nervous system. Okay, so if your central command are high frequency means contract very fast, and then you are going to recruit the muscle towards this direction. Okay, only high frequency. But if you just running slowly, that lasts for 30 minutes, you are only recruit the muscle surrounding the bone. Okay. And another thing, if you just stand, or you are just sitting, okay, your muscle is still contracting, okay, but it's relatively fewer. The reason that you have to have the muscle contraction during sitting and standing is for maintenance of your posture. Okay, so you won't fall into one direction, right? Okay. Why is the design like this? Why is slow motion recruit the small myofiber and high frequency contraction mobilize the myofiber outside? Why and you also understand that the mitochondrial number are much less for those big fibers surrounding on the surface of the skin, right? So those fast twitch, they have low mitochondrial number. Okay, the question again, why fast muscle, fast twitch has small number of mitochondria, low oxidative capacity? Why? 为什么比较粗的肌纤维那些白肌收缩速度很快的，它表现的粒线体的是比较少？它里面住的粒线体是比较少。Think about this. If you have a fast muscle contraction, do you think the oxidative metabolism is fast enough to sustain ATP production?
No.
No, right? It's impossible because the oxygen supply are a slow process, right? You want to have the oxygen diffuse from the lung and get into the muscle cell and then get into a mitochondria. That is a long process and a lot of barrier. So it's impossible to get fast on that, right? So if you do 100-meter sprinting, you are not going to increase the oxygen supply in your muscle immediately. It is going to take a long time, right? So that's why these fast twitch muscle, they are very powerful because they are big, right? But they cannot rely on the mitochondria. Okay, so if you have the mitochondria right here, this is the mitochondria right here. And another cell, you have the mitochondria right here. And you have the oxygen to get in, right? It's long distance. But here it's a short distance, right? So it is almost impossible for fast twitch to do efficient oxidative metabolism. It's almost impossible, right? So we have the physical structure design, which does not allow the fast twitch to have efficient oxidative metabolism. So even you put the mitochondria in, it takes a long distance to get oxygen. So if you measure, if you take out the muscle from the surface of your leg or from deep side of your leg, it's going to be completely different kind of muscle. Okay? That is very important for you to know because you are studying exercise. And if you take out your muscle 3 centimeters in depth, okay? Or you take out the muscle 4 centimeters in depth, would that be the same type of muscle? It's almost different, okay? So that's why when you do muscle biopsy, you have to describe how depth, what is the depth of the insertion of your needle. Okay, when you do an animal experiment, it's the same. You take out the white muscle or you take out the red muscle. It's going to be a big difference in the mitochondrial number. Okay, so I would give you more after 10 minutes break. Okay, so let's take 10 minutes break. Yeah, can you understand?
Yeah.
Good. 你们都可以听得懂吗？
No.
He said he doesn't understand, so you can teach him. 你可以啊，教他，就是大家互相帮忙一下。
我会跟上的。
没问题，不用担心。Bia, let's go to see 语文。We
听得懂他在讲什么 ？OK。你觉得我赌团听得懂吗？他说如果你问他，他会跟你想办法跟你说。哦，简单的说。OK。Thank you. Thank you. 但重点是什么？你要先学会问。你要知道怎么问。我都跟去啊。因为他就慢。快死了！咖啡因是不是太早了？好想睡哦。再去多拿一点啊！我这边什么都有。越喝越累。越。咖啡因就快要麻痹了。严重。
Oke, ada pertanyaan enggak? Bingung ya? Oke, Pak Ali coba sampaikan apa yang tadi Prof. Kuo sampaikan di sesi yang pertama. Jadi ini masih ada hubungannya dengan pembahasan yang kemarin. Kalau yang kemarin itu berkaitan dengan proses metabolisme anaerobik, glikolisis, dan juga stem cell. Ya, stem cell itu adalah jenis sel yang belum mature atau yang belum matang, belum jadi. Stem cell itu sifatnya masih general, belum jadi sel otot ataupun mungkin sel otot jantung ataupun mungkin sel apapun, itu namanya stem cell. Nah, pembahasan hari ini yaitu tentang TCA cycle sebenarnya, ya lebih fokus ke mitokondria. Ya, tadi diawali dengan perbedaan sel yang matang dengan sel yang belum matang atau yang disebut dengan stem cell. Kalau sel yang belum matang, energi production itu lebih cenderung ke proses-proses anaerob. Ya, jadi tidak membutuhkan oksigen, ya. Dia lebih sifatnya ke metabolisme anaerob. Namun untuk sel yang sudah matang, mereka membutuhkan energi dari produksi metabolisme aerobik. Nah, ditambah dengan tadi penjelasan mitokondria, bahwa mitokondria itu organel tersebut memiliki DNA ya sendiri seperti halnya sel yang sudah matang, sel eukariotik yang sudah matang. Jadi ibaratnya seperti sel di dalam sel. Ya, tadi Prof menyampaikan like a family begitu. Jadi memang mitokondria ini organel, tapi dia memiliki properti yang sama dengan sel. Ya, meskipun fungsinya fungsi utamanya dari mitokondria adalah memproduksi energi dalam bentuk ATP melalui sistem aerobik sebanyak-banyaknya. Usia hidup dari organel mitokondria itu berbeda-beda tergantung dari jaringan apa atau sel apa. Tadi disampaikan pertama bahwa half life of mitochondria itu sekitar 14 days, 14 hari. Ya, itu betul jika mitokondria itu berasal atau memang mitokondria itu di dalam jaringan otot jantung. Dia memiliki harapan hidup, ya, mitokondria yang ada di dalam sel jantung itu memiliki harapan hidup sekitar 14 hari atau 2 minggu. Namun jika mitokondria itu bukan dari cardiac muscle atau katakanlah skeletal muscles, otot rangka, mitokondria akan hidup hanya 2 sampai 4 hari. Begitu. Berikutnya tadi dijelaskan bahwa aktivitas fisik, latihan, itu kan memang sifatnya adalah stres atau tantangan yang diberikan kepada tubuh kita. Nah, selain daripada lingkungan di mana mitokondria itu berada, mitokondria itu akan mati dan diregenerasi lagi itu dengan cara ditantang ya, atau diberikan challenge, diberikan tantangan yang berupa aktivitas fisik. Ya. Saat aktivitas fisik dengan pembebanan yang benar, ya, maka itu bisa memberikan tantangan dan biasanya mitokondria jumlahnya di dalam sel itu turun karena tadi rusak karena merespon dari aktivitas fisik yang diberikan. Pada 0 menit pertama setelah aktivitas fisik itu selesai, itu jumlah dari mitokondria itu turun dan dia akan berangsur-angsur naik lagi, bahkan jumlahnya jadi 2 kali lipat daripada jumlah yang sebelumnya pada saat jam ke-48 setelah aktivitas fisik, atau 2 hari setelah aktivitas fisik, jumlah mitokondria itu akan berangsur-angsur pulih dan jumlahnya 2 kali lebih banyak dibandingkan dengan baseline atau jumlah yang sebelum melakukan aktivitas fisik. Kemudian tadi Pak Alil tanya ya, jika kemudian aktivitas fisik itu bisa memberikan pengaruh peningkatan mitokondria. Nah, bagaimana dengan orang yang tidak aktif secara fisik? Apakah kemudian mitokondria yang sudah naik karena aktivitas fisik itu turun, atau bagaimana? Dijawab oleh Prof. Kuo, penjelasannya bahwa mitokondria yang bukan tidak berguna ya, tetapi dia tumbuh begitu, itu kemudian lama-lama tadi harapan hidupnya tergantung di jenis sel apa, itu dia akan mati dan otomatis akan menyesuaikan, jumlahnya akan menyesuaikan kepada intensitas aktivitas fisik yang tubuh lakukan. Untuk orang yang tidak aktif secara fisik, jelas peningkatan tadi akan turun dan menyesuaikan dengan intensitas fisik yang dilakukan. Nah, ada 2 proses, tadi disebutkan ada 2 proses untuk eliminasi mitokondria atau organel sel yang tidak bekerja secara baik ya, maka perlu dieliminasi. Sistem intraseluler untuk eliminasi organel tersebut disebut dengan autophagy ya. Jadi autophagy itu adalah nama sistem ya yang sifatnya intraseluler, ada di dalam sel, itu untuk mengeliminasi komponen-komponen sel yang memang fungsinya tidak optimal. Sedangkan untuk sistem yang lebih besar, lebih ekstraseluler, sifatnya lebih sistemik ya. Jadi keseluruhan itu disebut dengan inflamasi atau yang kita kenal dengan peradangan. Ya, jadi apa bedanya inflamasi dengan autophagy ya? Bedanya adalah kalau autophagy itu sistem eliminasi yang sifatnya intraseluler di dalam sel, sedangkan inflamasi itu sudah sistemik. Dua sistem tersebut fungsinya adalah untuk mengeliminasi ya kerusakan-kerusakan atau mungkin infeksi yang masuk ke dalam tubuh kita dan kemudian meregenerasi ulang sel-sel yang tadi pada mati begitu. Itu yang paling tangkap. Kalau ada pertanyaan silahkan tulis saja di kolom chat, nanti Pali sampaikan ke Prof. Kuo. Begitu.
Mute. 好了吗 Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to talk about the muscle fiber, because if you don't understand the muscle fiber type, then it's going to be difficult for the later one. So if you have look at the muscle, you can classify the muscle into 3 types. You have type 1, and you have type 2. Type 2A and type 2B. Okay. Can everyone see this? Okay, so you have type 1 fiber, type 2 fiber, and type 2A and type 2B. And the color is red. And this is also red. And this is white. Okay, so if you look at the muscle fiber, type 1 is red. Type 2A is also red. And type 2B is white. And the reason that type 2B is white, there are many reasons. The first reason is mitochondria is low. Okay, mitochondria is low in type 2B fiber. Okay, and this is high, and this is also high. Another reason is capillary density. Capillary density is different. The capillary density is also high. High and low. Okay. So both is going to determine whether or not you can get sufficient oxygen supply and do mitochondrial respiration, right? So you can see that this is going to be, type 2B is going to be rely mostly on glycolytic metabolic pathway. So we call type 2B as glycolytic fiber. Okay, and the contraction speed is very fast. And this is also fast. And this is slow. Okay, how about type 2A? Type 2A is glycolytic and oxidative. And this is oxidative. Okay, so they have a different metabolic property. So if you look at the skeletal muscle and you take out the muscle from this part, it does not represent other part because the metabolic property are going to be a wide range. Big difference. How about heart? Heart. Okay, let me say. For heart, it's very close to type 1. The cardiac muscle, the property are very similar to type 1. Very similar. But the cardiac muscle has very strong protective mechanism. For example, you have a lot of antioxidant in cardiac muscle. And also you want to understand that heart and skeletal muscle, who get more blood? Heart, right? Because heart has huge amount of blood supply, and the blood carry oxygen, carry everything, especially the immune cell and stem cell, right? So heart has very good priority because it get everything. So when heart is damaged, it's very easy to repair. Okay, so if you look at the turnover rate of the cardiac muscle compared with the skeletal muscle, you found that the cardiac muscle die and regenerate as well, but only 1% per year. Okay, the heart cell can also die, but it's very few cardiac muscle cell die because it's well protected. So it recovers very quick. So you won't die, only small amount, okay? But in skeletal muscle, it's different. Skeletal muscle die, regenerate in much higher rate. Okay, so when people die, and if you look at the cardiac muscle remain young, quite young, okay? But if you look at the skeletal muscle, it's slightly different. It's get older compared to the cardiac muscle. Okay, so that's why we said priority in your body, number one, the brain, number two, cardiac muscle. Okay.
cardiac muscle 会有
有什么
DOMS
DOMS 的问题啊？不知道哎，从来没有人。This is very good question. You heard that delay muscle DOMS, right? Delayed muscle soreness after resistant exercise, right? You heard that, right? And here's the question. In skeletal muscle, you have the eccentric muscle contraction that cause pain in your skeletal muscle, right? And does it happen in cardiac muscle? Does that happen? Cardiac muscle. If you look at pain, muscle soreness is pain, right? Then I don't know. I'm not very sure, okay? But if you look at the information and muscle hypertrophy, it's the same in cardiac muscle. Okay, let me just give you, this is very good question, very good question.
Yeah.
So if you are small, if you are kids, age 15, okay, for example, you are small, right? Your body weight is small, and you have fewer cell number compared with you right now. You have a much more cell compared to when you are age 15, right? So when you have so many cells, and all cells require oxygen and all source in the blood, how would you satisfy every single cell in the bigger size of your body? How do you do it?你15岁，你的细胞数目很少，你现在体重比以前重，细胞数目更多了。我如何要满足每一个细胞都可以有足够的氧气跟养分来供应？而且最远的细胞都要可以活得下去。How do you do it? You have no other way to do it. Only increase your blood perfusion. when you pump your heart, right, and you have a fixed volume of the blood shooting to every single corner of your body, right? And how do you decide the speed of your perfusion and the force of your perfusion? Yes, the heart, if you have a contraction, you have a heart contraction, then you pump more, right? And what else? How about blood vessel? Yes, exactly. If you have a vessel contraction and you pump big enough, the force is high, then you shooting your blood into longer distance, right? So that you have, in that case, you have higher resistance against your cardiac muscle, right? And that can cause eccentric muscle contraction of your heart, okay? So that's why if you have a higher body weight, you have higher degree of the muscle hypertrophy in your heart. Okay, so that is the answer. You have a muscle hypertrophy if you have a higher body weight. Another way to saying this is if you have a more cell in your multicellular system, then you have to have bigger and strong heart. Okay, but as you grow bigger and bigger and bigger, you know what happened? The heart get bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And eventually, yes, eventually you're going to have a heart failure, right? Eventually, if the heart cannot keep going, then you have only two choices. The heart die or the peripheral cell die, right? You have only two choices, right? So that is the time when you have heart attack. So what is the best way to prevent that from happening? So remember that he gives the question, which is very important. The heart can adapt, right? And you can always grow bigger and bigger. So that means the heart can always adapt, right? But it can only adapt to a certain degree. The entire structure, when entire structure is too big, then you cannot pace up, you cannot follow, then the entire system is going to collapse, right? Okay. So what mechanism to make the cardiac muscle hypertrophy? What is the mechanism? Remember, eccentric muscle contraction is going to cause what? Eccentric muscle contraction is going to cause muscle inflammation, right? When you do weight training, the mechanism to drive your local growth is because of the damage. The damage is going to trigger inflammation. And then you have a lot of immune cell and stem cell get into the site of the challenge. And then you can regrow and becoming bigger. So that is the mechanism. And heart and muscle use the same mechanism. Well, actually, maybe we can say that all local tissues growth after challenge is driven by the same mechanism. So we always know that if you train part of your brain, for example, you train something, language skill or whatever you want to train, and the challenge the tissues is going to grow, right? Relatively higher compared to the untrained tissues. So you can specialize, you can adapt the challenge. And the fundamental mechanism of that is information. So we will talk about information later. Okay. let's go back to here. Okay. Just give you another idea. Okay. What kind of energy substrate would be used by type 2B fiber? What kind of energy? We have a 3 macronutrient, right? We have a carbohydrate and fat. Protein is not used for metabolism, so we have 2. We have a carbohydrate and we have fat, right? So is type 2 fiber using fat or carbohydrate?
Number 2.
Yeah.
Carbohydrate.
Yes, carbohydrate, right? Why carbohydrate? Why type 2 fiber cannot use fat much? Because fat burning require what?
Oxygen.
Oxygen. That's true, okay? And you can see that you have a low mitochondria and you have a low capillary. So that gives you low level of oxygen. Right? So you cannot do, no supply of oxygen and you don't have much mitochondria to do oxidative metabolism. So you are going to rely mostly on carbohydrate. How about this? Then you have fat and carbohydrate, right? And here, fat, even more, and carbohydrate. Okay. Okay, let me ask you another question. Make a guess. Which type of the muscle has more storage of fat? 这3种肌纤维，哪一个脂肪储存比较多？
Type 1? Is it?
If you store your fat into type 2B, does it work? That's right, type 1. Okay, and that has very important implication if you want to produce meat. So if you are the meat producer, right? Right now, the meat industry is booming, right? Especially it's very advanced in the past 20 years. So people learn how to produce meat. And the people found that if you want to produce the meat that has low fat, would that be delicious? No, right? 有听过和牛吗？有听过吗？哈，和牛的特征是什么？ Yes. So now the genetic manipulation technology are so easy, right? You can manipulate the gene to make the cow, you can produce the muscle that is making more fat or low fat, okay, depending on what you need, right? So from here, you know that in your muscle, in the cow, it has all different kinds of muscle fiber type. So if you want to manipulate the gene to produce the cow to fit your purpose, then it's very important to understand all these kind of things. Why is that? Can you produce the cow that has more type 1 fiber? The answer is yes, you can do that. Can you produce the cow with more type 2B fiber? Yes, of course, you can do it. Okay? It's very easy now. So if you know molecular biology, that the people already modularize all sort of technology to allow you to produce the cow to fit your purpose. Okay. Okay, I think this is good enough to give you the concept that muscle fiber in your body should not be considered the same. Okay, the muscle in your jaw right here is mostly fast twitch. Okay, so when you eat your food, this is not aerobic, this is anaerobic, okay? And when you do running, it's more aerobic. Okay, so here is very powerful. So it should not be considered muscle created equal around your body, which is not. Okay, so if you know this, then I will go further. So let's go back to glycolysis. Okay, where's that? Okay, let's go back to glycolysis. Okay, if you look at, 看到了吗？荧幕看到了哈。Okay, if you look at the right side, you have, see, this is the metabolic pathway of glycolysis, and which allow you to produce ATP. So you see right here, production of ATP, right? And you have 2 times. Why 2 times? Because all these GAP are 3 carbon, right? And glucose are 6 carbon, right? And when you invest 2 ATP to make the molecule bigger, and that causes collapse of the 3 carbon compound into 2 small 3 carbon compound, okay? And now for each 3 carbon compound, you have the electron release, and you have 1 NADH generated, and you have 1 ATP generated, 1 ATP generated, and times 2. So in total, you have 4 ATP generated, right? 4 ATP generated, and you are consuming 2 ATP. So you consider the first 2 ATP are investment, right? 前面2个 ATP 是投资，让它的位能增加，然后最后它崩盘了。And then you harvest additional 2 ATP. Okay, and this entire process is called glycolysis, and it generates 2 molecules of ATP. And this is very small amount, but it can be very fast, right? So advantage of the glycolysis is the chemical reaction are very fast, and you can generate ATP without the presence of oxygen. okay? And you generate 2 ATPs, which is not much, okay? But it's good enough for you to sustain the high intensity exercise for a period, okay? And this can occur without the electron acceptor, NAD, okay? The electron acceptor, NAD. If you don't have any electron acceptor, then the entire process will not be able to proceed. Okay? So this is one thing. So you need to have an NAD. Okay. And as you proceed this reaction for a long time, you are going to have accumulation of NADH. So what if you have accumulation of the NADH? What will happen? You are going to have a traffic jam, right? 你看哦，如果说我都没有氧气，然后我这个反应一直进行，你就会发生一件事情，就是我的 NADH 的浓度会越来越高，会累积上来。当 NADH 的浓度累积上来，就会造成塞车，整个塞回去，所以你整个化学反应是变得就会阻塞住。So you are going to have the traffic jam if you have accumulation of the NADH. Okay. So NADH is the electron, it's all located, it's all buffered in the NADH. So how would you going to release, how would you going to prevent the NADH accumulation? How would you going to release the stress? Well, remember, a lot of electron inside the NADH, right? How are you going to release those electrons? You have several solutions. First, oxidation. Yeah, you deliver the electron to oxygen, right? But what if the oxygen has not yet arrived? So that's a very good answer. You are going to deliver electron to oxygen. Yes. How do you do? How do you do it? The electron cannot go to the oxygen because oxygen is not there, right? So where is the alternative acceptor of the electron? The answer is right here. You see that? The 前面一个，看一下那个图。You see, look at the screen, and then tell me who is going to accept electron if you don't have oxygen.
Pyruvate loss.
Yes, that's true. You see NADH right here. It's going to deliver the electron to pyruvate. And when pyruvate has the electron, this molecule can no longer call pyruvate. It's called what? Lactate, right? So the lactate is reduced form of pyruvate, right? So lactate is simply a reduced form of pyruvate. And now you have the way to release your electron to somewhere, right? Without oxygen. So if you have this pathway is catalyzed by the enzyme called lactate dehydrogenase, right? So remember this, lactate dehydrogenase. Okay, and you want to know that the lactate dehydrogenase accelerate the chemical reaction and is bidirectional. 它是双向的哦，它是双向加速。Okay, so it accelerates the chemical reaction of both directions, from pyruvate to lactate or from lactate to pyruvate. So what is the advantage of this? Yes, exactly. You can reach the equilibrium and you can reuse, always depending on the concentration of pyruvate and lactate, right? So that is the advantage. Okay. Then I ask you a question. We just talked about if you have the NADH accumulation, then you're going to have the traffic jam, right? Because the high concentration of NADH is going to block fluxless pathway back to opposing direction, right? But what if you have a lactate? You are going to have the same thing, right? What if you have lactate accumulation in your muscle? You are going to have the same thing, right? However, this will not happen, okay? That will not happen. And the reason that it will not happen is because the all cells membrane has lactate transporter. So lactate is small molecule. It's very easy to diffuse in and out, okay? So you can use the blood, the entire body, the plasma to dilute the lactate produced in your skeletal muscle during muscle contraction. OK， 所以你看哦，我们乳酸的浓度如果累积的话，阿里 ，you can translate in this to your student in Bahasa. OK，
有老师。Mulai dari mana ini ya? Mbak Fia bisa bantu Mbak, karena tadi pindah ya dari, oke, dari kita mulai dari glikolisis dulu. Tadi di sebelum layar ini, Prof Kuo menampilkan proses glikolisis, dan di situ dari bagan yang ditunjukkan dari proses glikolisis di tahap pertama itu di dalam proses glikolisis, proses itu mengkonsumsi energi, ya, 2 molekul ATP dari 6 karbon molekul karbohidrat itu kemudian sampai dipecah ke dalam 2 molekul yang lebih kecil, itu membutuhkan energi, konsumsi energi 2 ATP. Namun pada tahap kedua di proses glikolisis, proses itu memproduksi 4 buah ATP. Nah, jadi dari proses glikolisis itu tadi investasinya adalah 2 molekul dan produk akhirnya 4 molekul, sebenarnya molekul yang diproduksi adalah 2. Namun demikian, dari produksi 4 molekul ATP di tahapan yang kedua, molekul lain selain ATP yang diproduksi dari proses glikolisis adalah molekul NADH. Ya, NADH ini jika produksinya terlalu banyak, maka NADH ini akan membuat metabolisme di dalam intraseluler itu macet. Nah, tanpa kehadiran oksigen, ya, maka NADH ini yang membawa satu molekul hidrogen ini perlu donor, perlu aseptor dari molekul hidrogen yang dibawa NADH ini. Nah, molekul penerima donor hidrogen adalah pirufat. Pirufat ini kalau kita lihat di mekanisme glikolisis adalah molekul akhir dari proses glikolisis aerobik. Nah, jika NADH ini mendonorkan molekulnya ke pirufat, maka pirufat ini akan menjadi laktat. Begitu. Aku kira begitu. Mungkin dari Mbak Fia ada tambahan? Tadi sebelum glikolisis, beliau Prof menyampaikan jenis tipe serabut otot. Saya kira itu mudah dipahami begitu. Tapi yang mulai dari glikolisis ini, yang paling dapat itu. Mungkin kalau ada pertanyaan bisa tulis di chat.
Okay, next week we are going to talk about oxidative metabolism. Okay, so we have 5 minutes for the Q&A regarding to the glycolysis. So if you have any question on glycolysis, please, now is the last chance.
Prof, so today we do not have any question from student, but actually we do have like the question from last week that you haven't answered.
Sure.
Okay, so the first question is from Trahesa. He's asking about the explanation on the different cell between normal cell and cancer cell in their own metabolism to produce energy. And this is still this is still regarding the glycolysis.
Yes, yes, good. 好，他们印尼的同学问的问题是，他想要知道癌细胞跟正常的细胞它的新陈代谢有什么不一样。Okay, so he want to know the metabolic feature between the cancer cell and the normal cell, right?
Yeah.
Okay, the first things you want to know is that the cancer cell are originated from stem cell. Okay, the cancer cell are the cell that has abnormal cell proliferation, right? And you understand the mature cell cannot proliferate. So only stem cell can proliferate, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And if you know the fact that the cancer cell are stem cell, mutated stem cell, okay? So the stem cell are the mutated stem cell. Then you understand that the cancer cell rely on glycolysis. Okay?
Yeah.
And you also understand the fact that the stem cell, what is the optimal living environment for cancer cell, for stem cell, okay? What is the optimal environment for stem cell? If you do cell culture, if you give oxygen, what will happen? Yes, the oxygen is toxic to stem cell. So it's going to kill the stem cell, right?
Yeah.
And if you give oxygen, the stem cell has only two choices. One is die, and another one is to mature. Okay. And when you get mature, you are losing your proliferation capability. Okay. So that's why there are many people, they are using the new alternative therapeutic strategy is to increase the perfusion of the tissues in the cancer, in your tumor, right? So that is alternative way. You give more oxygen to the tumor, and that is going to shrink the tumor because the tumor cannot survive when oxygen is a lot, right? And there are some people, they disagree with this strategy. And the reason people against this strategy, especially for the conventional cancer therapy people, they are actually against this strategy. And think about why they are against this strategy. Because they think if you open the blood vessel, then you're going to have what? The cancer cell migration from one side to the other, right? So that is what their concern. And the clinical evidence for the thermal therapy is the method to increase the local circulation to give more oxygen to the tumor. Okay, and there are some encouraging data, but it's not a lot. Okay, but some data are encouraging. So we still have no knowledge on this because we are not clinical scientists.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Any other question?
Yeah, we do have two questions more. One is from Aunur Lose. So he's asking if the glycolysis system is actually happening in any kind of living organism, or we as a human, we do have a different glycolysis system.
Okay, that's a very good question. Does glycolysis system different between species, among all species? Glycolysis 是不是只有人才有？ The answer is very simple. Glycolysis presence in all living organisms, regardless if you are mammal or if you are bacteria or yeast.
Yeah.
Every single cell you have glycolysis.
Okay. Also, we do have a last question from Etika. She's asking about the supplementation of sugarcane water for endurance physical training. So the question is that the supplementation can work and in which metabolism of the body?
Okay. Hi, Etika. Where are you? I cannot see you. I'm not sure. I don't know the answer. That's why we can do.
Yes, also, I'm still listening your lecture. Yes, I think about sugarcane still thinking much in my opinion. Yeah, I need your guidance, also.
Okay, let me ask. Does anyone know the sugar cane? What is the? You all know that sugar,
Yeah.
sucrose is the main content of sugar cane, right?
Yes.
What else?
Sucrose, then
除了蔗糖之外，就是那个甘蔗榨出来的汁，除了蔗糖之外，还有什么其他东西吗？这边很多营养专家，还有什么东西？除了 So any ingredients outside in addition to the sucrose from sugar cane. So I think that is the most important things we need to clarify before we get into the study. Right? Do you know any important ingredients other than sucrose from sugar cane, cane sugar cane, right?
Sugar cane, yeah.
Sucrose, then a little mineral and vitamin, I think, but just a little.
Fructose.
Yes,
Not sure. Okay.
Fructose.
I only know that the sugar cane tastes better.
Yeah.
That is one thing I know. And that obviously has some implication to the brain, the mouth and brain communication, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but we need to, if you want to do this kind of study, then you need to have the method to see whether the communication between your mouth, the taste, and the brain are different between the sugar cane and sucrose. Okay, yeah. So that is the rationale. And if there are some difference, then the sugar cane juice is going to be a popular sports drink, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know much about this. So maybe Etika, you can be the leading scientist in this area. you need to check, by the way, you need to check the current literature, whether this question has been answered by the scientists in the past. Okay, but that brings very good questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lausa. Yeah.
Lausa, a question from Etika is the last question that we've got today. So on behalf of the student from Indonesia, also from Taiwan virtually, say thank you so much for the knowledge that you have been delivering to us. And we will see you again next week.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much,
Take care,
Lausa. Yeah.
everybody, later.
Okay.
我怎么发现我们的学生比较不会问问题？